Just done my latest wardrobe change because we will be coming into. If any viewers want to make me a ridiculous offer on this T-shirt,
that's pretty sick.
Yep,
so you're getting signed to Profile Records. You talked a little bit about that.
So Greenhouse Effect, the original deal, it was just Cyber Sculpture that was signed initially, and that came out, and both sides of it did really quite well, and I because there was so little in that ambient house genre at the time, and Profile very quickly exercised an option to do an album, and I had everything on Greenhouse Effect, I think, except Butterfly Holocaust and maybe one other track, was all stuff. That was the stuff I was doing myself before that. I just basically just turned the drums up on all of it. It was I kind of like tailored it a bit, but that was what my sound was before I listened to house music. And you can hear it in some of the things. It's quite, there is a kind of like a more musician-y vibe, I guess, to some of it. And it's very much, I mean, to an extent, it's the one album I've made that I like, because it was this very pure thing of my sound before I had any interaction with the business, in that sense. I mean, I've made a lot of records as an engineer, but my own output, that was just my pure style of music. Thereafter, it became not commercial pressure, but you want to sell records. Or then I started DJing off the back of being Neutron 9000, and people are expecting a style from you, or you're needing to change with this. It all became influenced by what by what was going on in music around me then, whereas Greenhouse Effect was just purely my sound. And to an extent, even when I did the later ambient, like the pure electronic stuff, like Mysteries and so on, is much more. Yeah, that was much more the kind of thing I'm doing. But there was again this thing of what is acceptable within the parameters of ambient at the moment. Greenhouse was just entirely, which is why it doesn't sound like anything else. I saw a thing the other day that it was a recording of John Peel playing Transoceania, and I was like, oh, I love. Again, highlights of my career is hearing John Peel say Neutron 9000, because I've grown up with it. The first time it was like, yeah.
Which track did he play?
Transoceania.
Okay.
Played several, but this was, I hadn't heard him playing this one before, and I was like, Transoceania. Did I write a song called that? I have no idea what it is. I was like, it kind of sounds like one of my titles, but I had to go back, and I was like, when I heard it, I was like, oh yeah, that's it. But again, this goes back to the thing of, yeah, I don't associate songs with titles very often. In my recent deep dive into being early Neutron again, things we were fascinated with back then were the emerging cyberpunk movement, William Gibson's novels. I mean, there's endless Gibson quote references on Chiba City and all this kind of thing. So originally it would have been Blade Runner that we were fascinated with, then the Neuromancer and Burning Chrome and all that kind of thing, William Gibson. But we also we all used to read Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, for example. So there was a lot of science fiction-y kind of, and that. It's weird because cyberpunk now, with hindsight, is this kind of like really naff, awful thing. But at the time, it was like, this is the future. I remember Wired magazine, and oh god, there were all these like San Francisco hippie people. Or Zippies or whatever they were called. I'm trying to remember. There was another magazine from San Francisco which was really kind of like, cutting-edge cyberpunk, pre-internet kind of thing, and that was just very much the vibe of that, which is why all the Blade Runner samples on it. I'm one of the things that I've always amazed with about my career is I never got sued for a sample by anyone. I think that's one of the great things about not having sold very many records, because there were some fucking enormously blatant samples on my records. The Greenhouse Effect is covered in great chunks of Blade Runner. Of course, famously, Walrus finishes with a minute and a half of Led Zeppelin played backwards. The track "Bob's Your Uncle" on, because it used to be this thing back in the early days of sampling that, you know, is everyone going to get sued for using the drum beat of something? And the rule was the one thing you don't sample is Led Zeppelin, because Peter Grant will come and have your legs broken, until the Beastie Boys removed that thing. But as a nod to that, I took just a fucking huge chunk of Robert Plant singing and played it backwards as the outro to the album. Again, one of those kind of like self-sabotaging humor things, I think.
And so you ended up having 3 albums as Neutron 9000, and not going too much into Lady Burning, but so you're saying there was a lot of pressure to start to have a hit during that time, or did you have any possibilities of like touring outside of Germany, or
Greenhouse Effect? When Greenhouse Effect came out, so Sentinel was almost a hit, and they pushed it to be a hit, and you know, it had the makings of that and so on. And it just didn't. I think I charted with both of them, but like, you know, I think Sentinel maybe got to number 53 or something, and Cyber Sculpture got to 78 or something like that, which isn't like setting the charts on fire, but it was enough for the label to say, well, let's do another album. And then, so when it came to doing the second Neutron album, by this time, suddenly we'd had Primal Scream and, you know, Stone Roses and all this kind of thing, and that whole kind of like indie crossover thing was much more in vogue. And they were like, you know, we'll give you another. When I say commercial pressure, it wasn't like you must go and have a hit. It was, this is how I was paying my rent by being an artist now, and in order to get, I think my advance for the second album was like $8,000 or something. In order to get that, I had to. They were like, you can't do another album of that plinky plonky electric shit. You've got to have a hit on this if we're going to continue paying you. So I came back in the next day with Love's Got a Feeling, and, you know, and they're like, so a hit. Yeah, so then they gave me the money. And, you know, Love's Good. It's strange, the songs of mine that have endured through time. Sentinel has Butterfly Holocaust, which was literally, I had about an hour left in the studio and a bit of time left on the record, so I literally threw that together on the spot. Love's Got a Feeling, I think it was the only song some people still actually remember. But yeah, so Love's Got a Feeling, suddenly this kind of like Ibiza kind of, it was a big Ibiza tune. It's constantly licensed on, you know, these kind of like early Ibiza blah blah records, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of pleasing. But it was an entirely different like genre even. I remember when I first moved to Berlin, there were a lot of people who said, "Oh, your first album was so good, and then that second album was so shit with all these saxophones." But yeah.
What do you remember about this record?
Oh, I'm so ashamed.
Are you ashamed of it? Yeah.
I don't think I've even listened to it since it went to be pressed. So that was, yeah, that's a pure prostitution record. So I needed money to pay the rent. I said, there was this guy called Mahesh Bajaj who had, back in the electro days, there was it Morgan Khan from Street Sounds? They used to put out all these compilations.
Yeah.
So there would be like, you know, the new electro sound, whatever. And the way they would do them is they would like license 2 or 3 tracks, big tracks that you know expect, like Al Fish or whatever. And then it was the guys who became Future Sound of London who worked in the studio there. They would then make in the studio like 10 tracks that sounded kind of in the same way, and come out with that
under different names too.
Yeah. And then so they only had to license 3 tracks, which were the hits, and all the rest was their own labels and stuff. And there was this guy Mahesh Bajaj who had a kind of like a lesser version of that label. And when the Bleep thing happened, I went to his office and said, I can make a Bleep album by next weekend. and he like there would be like TV advertised and shit. So there'd just be, they would sell as many. They'd press whatever 50,000, TV advertise it, and sell it all in a month. And by the time people realised that half of it was shit, they'd like sold out and it didn't matter. So that was the deal. And yeah, I think he paid me, like £2,500, and I did some Sonic Bleeps in a week. But maybe not even that long, like 3 days. I mean, it all sounds like exactly the same. I have no idea how bad it is anymore. And none of it is actually bleep music. It's just, I just wrote tracks and then put a bleeping sound on it somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I don't dare listen to that one. Is it terrible?
Hey, it's part of your legacy in a strange way, and people really adore it. People really like it. It's strange because in the last few years there's been a resurgence in people understanding the EBM side and then the new beat side. And I mean, people that are starting to like goth rock and get into goth rock are really starting to like a lot of new beat and industrial around that time. And then kind of bleep kind of came out of that and early techno.
Yeah.
And so that lineage there is important for a lot of people that got into new beat and post acid house.
So that leads me on to another thing again, another epiphany I've had in the last few weeks, which is again, it's been a real like reblossoming of my interest in music. But one of the things that happened, one of the big regrets I had through my career, one of the things I was the most ashamed of, was my remix of "It's My Life" by Talk Talk. So how that came about, my friend Joey Montana used to work at EMI, and long before this, in the Duran era, and still had some contacts there. And we were like, when I was DJing Chill Out in the really early days, it's a perfect song to play like as the sun comes up. From a Balearic point of view, when everything was like, you can just play anything. But it wasn't really laid out perfectly for that. So we went to EMI and said, "Can we remix this?" And to my surprise, they said yes, but they sort of like, "You've got to, like, we'll pay for 1 day studio time and see how it goes." So I went and did the remix, and I can't believe I've only listened to it again in the last few weeks because I was so the fallout from it was so bad, and I'm astounded that I put the Neutron bass line in there, the thing that's like the most, their bass line is like the anchor of the song, and I replaced it with my bouncing sequencer. That was ballsy. My mix is the A side of the re-release, which went to number 2 in the UK charts. And they re-released the Talk Talk's greatest hits off the back of it, and then I did Life's What You Make It, and then they got loads done by like Fluke and The Orb and all sorts of people, and did a Talk Talk remixed album, which Talk Talk then sued them over, saying they had absolutely no right, because Talk Talk fucking hated it. Right, so that's the backstory of this. So immediately after I did the Talk Talk one, and it's in the charts, I've got a record in the top 10. I'm like, I start getting more job offers and work and so on, and going to like bigger parties, and around that time that my friend Matt Denny, who was on the Neutron 9000 dance days at the Brixton Academy thing, he's the guy on the other keyboard. He was really good friends with some people at Creation Records, so we're kind of like mixing with My Bloody Valentine and Prime Scream and all this kind of thing. And I'm meeting all these kind of like key people, and I'd be going, "Oh, hello, yeah, really good to meet you." And they go, "I know who you are. Fuck off." I go, "What?" They'd say, "You did that Talk Talk remix, didn't you? Fucking destroyed it, you bastard. That's my favorite song." And I was kind of, "Oh, you're right. I have destroyed it." And to an extent that was true, because Talk Talk, what makes those records is the attention to detail, the sonic attention to detail. And we just go in, you've got 3 hours, strip everything off, put a huge drum beat on it and a bouncing bass line. It's a bit disrespectful in that sense. So all my career, I've been like, I'm the man who destroyed Talk Talk's greatest hit. I've always been so fucking ashamed of it, and have never listened to the record until the other day when I can't remember how it came up, but I think it may have been our conversation about doing this. And then I discovered, or I looked at on YouTube. I started looking at the comments, and I was expecting it all to be this is destroyed. And there are hundreds of comments in Spanish from people saying this is my favorite ever mix of this is so beautiful, and it's clearly played a lot by a lot of Spanish DJs and Latin DJs. And I listened to it again with that in mind, and I thought, yeah, that's just I can see this totally. It's because there's like a lot of literal ambience in the background, lots of like nature noises and shit and percussion, and just the bass line, and that's it. And I can see from a kind of like a Balearic perspective, it's actually not a bad mix at all. But all my life I've been like, oh my god, I'm so ashamed of this. And now I'm like, I was just misunderstood. It was my audience is different to what I always thought my audience was. So part of it is like clearly part of it is kind of like samba dancers, and part of it is people who listen to space rock. And who cares what the techno heads think? Fuck them. I followed up with both doing the Live Sweet Make It remix as well. So my name's on both of those. And I think actually at the time that was much more. I went into the second one thinking I can't fuck this one up as badly as the first one. I was a bit more respectful, but as a consequence, I think it's a bit more of a boring mix now. Listening to it, I think it's my life. It's just.
That's kind of the lesson.
It takes it somewhere else, whereas
that's kind of the lesson of when there's pressure to make music like somebody else, or you think somebody else might want, right? That's the
absolutely that is the prime example of that. What I was saying about how my first work, when I didn't ever expect anyone to listen to it, was a lot more honest, I guess.
Army of Lovers.
Oh right, okay.
How did that relationship start?
That was back when I was a studio engineer.
Okay.
Much earlier. So the company I was working for, the record company who owned the studio, as I said, was Swedish, and there was some connection to maybe they had publishing of Army of Lovers. I'm not sure, but Army of Lovers came over, and for a month, I had the pleasure of their company for a month in the studio, and again was kind of like. I was the young kid who was kind of like compatible with it, because there was a lot of. I mean, Alexander Bard is one of the most fucking fascinating people I've ever met. He's now a philosopher, a famous like academic philosopher in Sweden. He was the most mad. It was a bit like working with Salvador Dali or something. He was just one of those out there fucking visionary genius mad people. But I think I've got a writing credit on a couple of. I think
it was this one, Riding the Bullet.
There's also one called Mondo Trasho, which I gave him I came up with the title for that one.
Maybe you got Neutron Bomb too.
So there was the reference with the Neutron thing. That was I was the Neutron Bomb. That's how that started.
Nice.
But that was kind of before my foray into actually being an artist. So this is where the crossover with the Orb and everything happened. So I'd known Alex and Youth particularly from back in the King Joke days and so on. But then when Neutron 9000 is in the music press as ambient house and so on, me and Alex suddenly started talking, and I started doing some remixes for Wow Modo. And one of those was there's actually just while I'm on the subject for have you read Planes, Trains and Amphetamines by Kirk Field? Have you read either of Kirk Field? And he wrote also Rave New World. He's a British music journalist and was a huge.
Okay, it sounds familiar. Yeah, it sounds familiar. I know Brave New World.
I only read it recently. Absolutely love Kirk, mates for all these years, but there's a chapter in there about how he was negotiating with Glastonbury Festival in 1990 to do the first ever introduction of electronic music at Glastonbury Festival, and it would have been a chill out area, which would have been me, the KLF, the Orb, and probably Mixmaster Morris, and then it didn't happen because of the great kind of like drug thing in hysteria press about as it has. And I was like, my God, how my career would have gone stratospherically different if there was, if that had happened. What did I remixed for them? Oh, Delcom, very advanced house music by Delcom. It's on Wow Modo. You can find it on YouTube. I did a remix of that, and a couple of weeks later, Gabby Delgado of Delcom phoned me up and said, "Would you like to come and play at our party in Berlin? We will pay you your flight, and we will pay you kind of like it was quite a lot of money. It was like
this is when you're living in UK, right?
Yeah, I was still living in London at this time, and I was like, "Fuck yeah!" So, and also, I mean, Gabby Delgado, absolute hero of mine. He was in DAF.
Oh yeah, okay, that's right. That's right. The name. Yeah.
And I'm like, God, I'll come and play at your party. And that was my first introduction to Berlin. And I went and I played a DJ set and a load of my own DATs. And it blew the house down. And there were loads of like prominent DJs who came to see on the day, and they were like, oh, and so I was suddenly the toast of Berlin for a couple of weeks. And yeah, the next week I just started getting bookings from Germany, and I was like, okay, I'm appreciated here, so I just moved there. On the day I went out to do my first DJing set there, I went to our record distributor in London, and a guy called Mike Maguire, Mr. Magoo, was he was in charge of imports, and he went on to be in Junior Reactor. Mike Maguire he became a trance DJ huge trance DJ, Goa trance DJ for years. He was just like controlled all this month's what this week's hot imports were. So I went to him and I was like, I've got to play in Berlin and I don't have a good set, and he's just like gave me a whole bunch of this is really hot, this is going to be big, this is going to be huge, have this and this and this. And of those records, these are literally records that came out that week. I think one of them was one of them Dominator. One of them was definitely The Prodigy. I forget which EP, whether it was Charlie or there were like 3 or 4 of the records in my box had never been heard outside of London, were just hitting London shops that week, that went on to be like colossal fucking rages. So all these DJs have come to see what my set is, and I'm dropping these tunes that no one's heard, which a week later are like the biggest tunes. And it was like, oh, he knows his shit. And I didn't really at all. So, yeah, that was how that happened.
And so, what can you tell us about like the Frankfurt scene as it's growing? I mean, you're right in the peak of the Frankfurt trance scene.
So I lived in Berlin for the initial time I was there, but Berlin was very much techno. It was very much the Tresor thing. It was very much hardcore. There wasn't, I think, they would. It was good because I would get to do when they did want to chill out DJ, I was the only one, so it would be me, and then you'd play all night for the price of one DJ. But Frankfurt was a bit more. It's a bit more business oriented. Berlin was very punk and very underground at that time still, whereas Frankfurt was very much more business orientated. Omen, all the labels, IQ and Logic, and all this. It was very much more business and very much more kind of. I don't want to say sophisticated, but their taste was a lot more. They had the Excess Club, that was kind of like the key to it. It was Mark Spoon and Alex Atzari's chill out club, basically. And I went to play there. I played in Vienna the night before, and then went to do my first all-night chill out in the Excess Club. And I got to Frankfurt and I went to Delirium Records, which was owned by Heiko MSO. Rest his soul, rest his and Atamasius, who is, do you know Atta? He runs, he ran Ongaku, Clink Clang. The Robert Johnson Club in Frankfurt.
Yeah, I'm a huge Delirium fan and Heiko and stuff. And
they were such lovely. Hang on, what's that? Oh, no, nothing. and there's this other guy, Jörg, who was their third partner. And on the night I arrived, Jörg took me in the early evening. It was winter because it was dark. He took me in his car. He had a nice Audi sleek German car, and he drove me all around the outside of Frankfurt's motorways at night. It's got a really kind of like high tech cityscape, and he was playing some. I can't remember what it was. It was some kind of like Juan Atkins or something, and it just fitted. And it was like being in a manga movie. It was suddenly like being in like Akira in life. And I just thought this is a different type of. This was much more the machine thing that was in my mind rather than the Chisel basement thing, which is very much underground resistance style.
Yeah.
So yeah, Frankfurt appealed to me a lot then.
And that's what kind of led to
no. All of those were. I think all of those were done in Berlin, actually.
you did all these in Berlin, the United
yeah.
Frequencies of Trance.
Yeah, brute force. Oh, that's a terrible. There's one I regret. I don't. The brute force one's terrible.
Which one was your favorite? I really like number one.
The one that has drift factor on it.
Oh yeah, drift factor. I think that's again, two.
Neutron 9000 tracks that would never been on, that were lost to compilations. Drift factor, yeah.
These are still finding their audience.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I love those. I do love those. So just what I was about to say about the other one, the guy who I did that with, Andrew Bricks, he did a couple of kind of I had the Basic Instinct label, which was more kind of like ravey. He did a couple of things there, but he's become in the years since a hugely successful like mainstream producer in Germany, and I think he is the guy who is the head judge on Germany's Got Talent or X Factor Germany or whatever. He's like this huge mainstream kind of guy.
Those probably would have got a lot more press if you would have named them Neutron 9000, or you just didn't feel like it fitted with that name?
So the thing of, yeah, I guess. I don't know. I can't remember.
Or were you still under contract?
No, because that was my own label licensed through MFS at that time. And then the later ones were just direct. I don't know. I've always just like working under different pseudonyms and like thinking up different names and so on.
Where does the long names of songs come from?
So I've always yeah, I mean that's part of the thing of what is it? Three things grooving with a picked in a cave and yeah, I guess listening to a lot of Tangerine Dream albums and so on. I think I like that. There's one of my tracks. I forget which of my pseudonyms it is, but it's "Creatures Made of Light glide softly across the ever circling homeworld in golden warm things of dub" or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that kind of there was a lot of that about. I mean, an everlasting brain that rules from the center of the ultra world. It's a nod to 60s B movies and so on as well, I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
Did you go to a lot of events at like Dorian Gray or Box or Omen or?
Dorian Gray, not so much. I didn't go out a lot in Frankfurt. I mean, obviously went to the Omen for like Sven's birthday and so on. I mean, a lot of the time then I was actually like DJing at the weekends. So, I would be in clubs, but not. Yeah, generally afterward played and generally
at your height. How often are you DJing on weekends or during the week? Every weekend?
Oh well, kind of then in the latter kind of part of my career before I came back to England. Yeah, no, every week. I became a working schlep DJ, but I wasn't a lot of that. No, actually, I did pick up. I was a pretty shit technical DJ. Then around the time of, I guess when the whole progressive house thing took off, I had another kind of like surge in my DJing then, and kind of that whole hard hands, guerrilla, that kind of era. And that's when I started playing in New York a lot. So I had residency at the Limelight for a while. Disco 2000 in the Limelight. And then I got into that whole Peter Gation. My manager in New York was I did some stuff with Keoki. I was doing an album for Keoki.
Yeah, he was huge in LA when I grew up. Huge.
His manager then took me on and just got me gigs in America a lot. And I think he was Peter Gation's right hand man. So I mean, I was playing at like Club USA and
NASA.
Yes, Scotto and DB, that was them, wasn't it? They actually they were working at Profile in New York when I was so there's a side story with almost going back to Profile. And yeah, no, I used to play in all sorts of places, Save the Robots.
I didn't never know that. I didn't know you played out in America. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of that became.
Is that what that's struck up the Instinct relationship because I was in New York, or
it was about the same time. So I was doing lots of deals in New York. So when I was first on MFS, they had me, then Paul Van Dyke and Kid Paul, I think, and Cosmic Baby, and they. Well, actually, no. First, it was me and Cosmic. I think Paul Van Dyke came along after that when he did the first what was it, Visions of Shiva with
Visions of Shiva,
with Cosmic.
Yeah,
I think that was probably Paul Van Dyke's first record, and then he kind of like became the rising star. But initially it was me and Cosmic, and they had the money to invest in one or the other. They did a deal with the Alarm of Front Page magazine to promote one of us, and not the other. And they chose him at Cosmic quite rightly because, you know, he was German and better than me, and less troublesome. But then in the kind of like the course of the following year, so then Cosmic and Paul became, you know, huge stars, and I kind of like languished in obscurity. And this is brilliant. This is the absolute nail in my coffin of my career at the time. On New Year's Eve, in the back room of the Planet Club, or was it Averek at that time? I can't remember. Planet or Averek, whatever it was called at that point. Jürgen Lahrmann of Front Page magazine was going around with his little tape recorder asking people what their wish for the new year would be. And this was kind of like 4 o'clock in the morning on New Year's Eve morning, New Year's Day morning. And I think uncharacteristically for me at that time, I'd probably taken an enormous amount of cocaine. And cocaine was never really my drug. I was like, I used to like to smoke, and as far as stimulants go, I was just like a speed person. Coke doesn't. I don't like that Coke thing, but on this occasion, I'm sure I had done a vast amount of cocaine. When he asked me what my wish for the new year would be, I sent Cosmic and Paul Van Dyke in a tragic Buddy Holly style air accident, which is that's British humor. I mean, British humor is very kind of like bantery and so on, and I think I just said it as a throwaway, off the cuff, kind of like, you know, like a Leonard Skinner of France. But he, being a good like journalist, of course, saw that's a fucking really good. So when the magazine came out, that was printed in fucking bold. And then there was this. I started getting death threats and so on. You would because Cosmic and Paul were just so, you know, cute, baby faced kind of little angels of this beautiful trance scene. And who's this horrid English punk who wants to kill them. And that absolutely, and it did wonders for everyone. It was lots of publicity for them, but I didn't come out of it very well. And I think that that was one of the nails in my coffin at that time.
Doing a record for Casper Pound, how that came about, and we have the result of that here with the strange cover of the Rim.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what this car connection was. It looks like like one of those relations of like driving rock. It looks like it should have Radar Love by Golden Earring on it. And but yeah, that was a fantastic experience. I came to London and they wouldn't let me go in the studio on my own for fear of what I would do on my own. So they put me with Lawrence Elliott Potter, who was the engineer for a lot of Rising High stuff. He's also Friends, Lovers and Family at that time.
Yeah, New Leaders of a New School of Electronics or something. Yeah.
And he's a lovely guy and a musical genius. And it was the first time I'd done a record like that. I'd collaborated with people before, but doing a record where he was the engineer and the facilitator, and I just like produced and played. And it was really that turned out to be really exciting. And we did like some some more and more bonkers shit during the course of the few weeks we were doing it. We did it at oh god, I'm trying to remember the studio. It was where it was the studio where Enya had recorded Orinoco Flow. And I think Oasis were in there at the same time as us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I remember you mentioned that on that video.
Yeah. So amusingly, interestingly, Lawrence and I are back in touch, and yeah, we are planning to. He's got a studio out in Portugal. I'm planning to go out and do some more stuff with him as well. So Josh Wink, for example, told me that back. I remember meeting Josh Wink for the first time, and he said that he has 5 records next to his bed and his record player, and one of them was Greenhouse Effect. I can't remember the next one was fucking Astral Weeks by Van Morrison. I fucking hate Van Morrison. I was like, you could have just left it at that. You could have just left it at Greenhouse. I think one of I think maybe Eno's Discreet Music was one of the others. But yeah, my smaller selling records kind of had more influence, I think. I don't know. But again, the whole thing of business and music is just totally separate in my head now.
I mean, Rising High was huge. What kind of memories do you have about the tracks on there? Do you still like what you did on there, or I know you mentioned
again, it's one that until Tiga re-released it, I hadn't listened to it since I'd left the studio. And then he sent me the remastered versions. I remember sitting and listening to them in my car, and enough time has passed now that I can listen to it kind of objectively, because you're always, when you've made a thing, you're like, oh, this could have been better or whatever, and then I just didn't listen to it for 30 years, and coming back to it, it was like, oh yeah, this is, some of it was, yeah, actually there was one track on it that I thought, I know this is something I like, and it was actually a track that I actually had on my playlist and didn't realize it was by me. So yeah, I like a lot of Lady Burning Sky. I do really like. There's some of the shit I'm astounded they let us get away with. Beryl's Psychedelic Cleaning. So the noises in the back of that, and the title was that it was like 7 o'clock in the morning, and we'd worked through the night, and we'd put microphones all over like the building to do kind of like ambient recording. Some of the sounds on there are hoovers being whirled around, and we were doing all sorts of mad shit like that. And we'd left the microphones on, and the sliders were up on that end of the desk, and the cleaning ladies came in. And we're going about cleaning the rest of the building and washing up in the kitchen and so on. And it's kind of like come up on the desk. So we just faded it into the mix. That's what all the funny little noises in the middle are. And someone's going in and saying, oh, have we got any washing up liquid and so on. And we're just like, yeah. So I think the first few tracks on you can hear there's some really experimental shit. That and what's the other track? Talking Eyebrow. That's just us. Probably, I think we knew we'd recorded enough for the album by that point of kind of like commercially viable ambient, and it was like, let's just have some fun. And like, so I think on
it really is like 3 different ideas together, because you do have the you're trying to appease them with the Indian,
Yeah, yeah,
track, Indian prayer, and then you have the experimental side, and then you have what you're actually focused on.
yeah. I would say that's probably true. Um, uh, Again, I think one of the there was a track on there which is uh,
Is there some Japanese influence on there, like on NAB?
yes, 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 yes,
For
yes. There
sure.
was
Yeah.
a lot of, I lived in Japan for I can't remember, 9 months a year. One of the things that was very fortunate for me in the early 90s when I was in Berlin was after living in some like squats and shit, we had the great fortune to have this incredible apartment. We were being evicted, and we'd gone to the short-term rental place. And while we were there, this guy came in, like a business guy, and he said, "I've just bought this flat, blah, 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 but I have to go to Tokyo for a year now. So my company have just told me I need to rent this flat out today." And we went, "We'll rent it." And he's like, "Okay, rent it to them." And it was this enormous, enormous, like, I don't know, 280 square meter apartment off the Fürstendamm in the center of Berlin, which is like the most upmarket, posh kind of like avenue. And we didn't have any furniture, and I had my studio in there, and there's this enormous, beautiful building from the 1900s. So as a result, we had a lot of space. So when people came from other places and had nowhere to stay, they would just turn up. This is the story of how I met Tiga. He just turned up one day and said, some friends of mine said, in fact, it was Robert Gauthier, the Montreal DJ,
Yeah.
had stayed with us a few weeks before.
Hmm.
And he'd told Tiga. So that's how Tiga came. But I also met a guy, DJ Toby Itsui. He's still
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I have a poster of his on the wall, actually.
have you? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
he did some music
again,
with Gabriel Lamar.
very probably. So
Yeah.
he used to. So his father was a famous chef in Tokyo. He was the man who was allowed to prepare fugu for the emperor. He was like a really prominent chef.
Oh.
And one of his things, I think his father had created the first class menu for Japan Airlines. And as one of the things from that, his family had unlimited air travel on Japan Airlines. So Toby used to just like fly around. Who was an absolute music nut. He wasn't a DJ back in those days. He was just like a music fan. He used to, and I would keep meeting him in different places. I met him in London with Michael Wells of GTO. And I was like, "Oh, this guy Toby!" Oh. And then he pops up in Berlin, and and I see like him in San Francisco. He knew everyone in every scene around the world because he could just fly to everywhere, and he was such a lovely, beaming guy. So he then would, when he was in Berlin, would stay in my flat, and then every time he brought people over, like Yokota or I'm sure his name was Fumiya Tanaka. Let me. So they
Yeah,
would,
Fumiya Tanaka, yeah, the
yeah,
techno DJ and artist,
yeah.
yeah. He was
Um,
on Trezor.
all of these people would stay at my
Yeah,
flat
yeah.
because we had so much room. So as a result, I kind of like would get all of these kind of releases from. There was who was it from New York who used to stay in my flat. That's how I met Kyoki as well, I guess. And so yeah, as a consequence, he was my conduit to a lot of I would go wake up and Yokota and Fumio were sleeping in my living room. So, that was my conduit to them. But he then took me over to Japan the first few times and played in
Ah,
Tokyo and so on.
so the poster on my wall that Toby Uzu and Gabriel Lamar did, they did an album called Super Cruisers, and it has really cool artwork of a plane on it. And now it makes sense. You're telling me
Yeah.
that, yeah, I got two copies. But this is the poster that I have on my wall because I love the artwork of this albums compilations. Of course, you had the Oceans of Infinity on this compilation, and
So
Stray Light was
that was
on here
earlier.
as well.
That was earlier. That
Yeah,
was
these
like
were on 90. Well, I mean, 93,
92.
94. These compilations came out anyway.
Yes,
So
yes, but
yeah,
the that preceded Lady Burning Sky and so on by
yeah.
ages.
But Stray Light was 94, so sort of at the end there.
Probably. The timings of the 90s are a bit of a blur to me.
Yeah. And of course, you had these amazing albums.
Yeah, I can't remember how I got signed to Instinct. Um, I don't have any idea how I got signed to Instinct. I think I met Jared Hoffman somewhere, and I liked Jared Hoffman. He was a really good guy. Um, in as much as anyone in the music business who thing, but he was Instinct Records was the only record label who I ever got royalties from,
Really?
and years after, for like a good 10, maybe 15 years after, every now not I mean like my records I don't know like hundreds of thousands of dollars arrive and so, but every before Christmas suddenly kind of like $1,000 would arrive or $1,500, and it would always be just before Christmas, and it would be there were many years that Christmas was paid for by Instinct Records. Yeah,
I was in the record store and I had a stack of CDs. And this is back in the days when you could take the stack of CDs and you could actually listen to them.
yeah.
I must have had like 20 CDs. And for some reason I did not buy this. And it's probably just because I had so many. And this became my most sought after CD for the next 8 years until I got on the internet and actually found one and bought. And of course, then I bought two. And it's it's my favorite work of yours.
Is it? I haven't listened to that in years actually.
I mean, it's got diffusion on there,
Oh right, okay, yeah.
which I can't tell you how many times I've been put to sleep by that song. It's one of the most beautiful tracks, and I
Oh, thank
love it because it floats about, and then it has midway through it has this part where it sort of goes into its own thing, and then it comes back into the beautiful softness and just floats out, and it's just one of the most amazing tracks.
So one of the things that I
It was
find
really the reason why I wanted to put it on vinyl for the first time and just kind of honor that and share it because I just felt like it was like the most perfect ambient song that you ever made.
so so one of the things that I've alluded to before, one of the things I don't like about a lot of modern electronic music, and the way that modern electronic music is kind of forces itself to be produced. Back in the day, all these kind of like artists that we were talking about, Tangerine Dream or like Cluster and Popol Vuh and all these kind of crap rock people, it may have been structureless or formless or freeform or whatever, but it had a beginning, a middle, and an end. It kind of started, it explored some ideas, it went somewhere, and then now it's kind of like it starts to dum to dum to dum, and then it's just kind of like mish mash mish mash mish mash finishes. There's no and yeah, I think a lot of the tracks on there is a form. I mean, it goes back to I guess the thing we were talking about modern classical music and so on. It's kind of more rooted in that than Mr. Fingers. Erotic Nature of Automated Universes came out just at the point I was leaving Berlin, and I left Berlin quite suddenly, just like on a decision one day. Actually, no, actually, I'm not going to tell that story. Well, yeah, I will. The Virgin Mary told me to leave Berlin whilst I was high on shrooms, and I went to a phone booth and phoned my mother and said, "Don't ask any questions. Can you get me on a flight out of Berlin this afternoon?" Came back to London on the spot because the Virgin Mary told me to. Anyway, and I'm not religious, I'm not Catholic at all. Anyway, probably edited that bit out. So I'd gone to was now sort of based in London. I think I was making a sample CD for someone, and I'd been staying with this girl who I'd met. There's a bit of a story behind that, which we won't go into with one of my former musical colleagues. But I'd been staying at her house, and Instinct said, "Where can we send you your artist copies of the?" So they sent me a box of the CDs, finished box of the CDs. And I've given her address, and I was off at the studio during the day, and it was a hot summer day, and she was like sunbathing on her balcony, and then the courier came and knocked on her door, and she's gone downstairs, and she's who's been sunbathing topless, so she's just in the bottom half of the bikini, and she like just is holding something in front of her, and goes and signs for this thing. And she said he kept looking at me really, really weirdly. Look, obviously, I'm almost naked, but he's like looking at me and looking at the thing, and he's like, and then noticed that what it says on the side of the box is erotic mysteries. That's all it says. I was like, yeah, okay, that's good to raise an eyebrow.
I have this on my wall. It's a framed poster, and it's Instinct.
Oh, yeah.
It's the cover of Plug In and Turn On One, and
Yeah, no, I was definitely the best looking of them, wasn't I?
yeah, of course, Cabaret Voltaire is on here. Drum
I was
Club.
the most handsome.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course. Human Mesh
Kelly
Dance.
Timeless and
Terry
yeah,
Dupree, GTO,
yep.
Lee Lewin,
Yes.
Irresistible
Yeah, I mean,
Force.
they were really visionary of what the stuff that they were putting out, and they stuck with me for like 2 albums and a whole bunch of compilation tracks.
Oh my
It,
God.
I don't think I don't think the self-titled one sold hardly anything on its first release. I think
I have
it sold over the years, but they had the vision to, okay, we haven't made any money on this one, let's do another one.
Plug In
Oh,
and Turn On 2, Stranger in a Strange Land.
is that the one, the Guns N' Roses one, with the violin
No.
and the guitar solo and
Well, it has the violin and the acid one.
yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. It was,
Amazing.
I think it was like it was My November Rain.
You were on so many compilations.
Yeah, I don't even know that one.
Ambient Systems,
Oh yeah. That's a good CD.
Kill Out or Die.
Never seen that one.
I don't know if you remember Amberdelic Space. It had
No,
your
seen that one.
Butterfly Holocaust on it. It was trying to remember who did this. Dress to Kill label.
No, never heard of them.
Yeah, you were on this box set as well. It's a 6-disc box set with your Butterfly Holocaust on here too.
Never got any money for that either.
And of course the Plug In and Turn On.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah. But and then those recycled, man. I was finding your stuff everywhere. And you just kept on popping up those couple years. Like 94, 95. You were on all my favorite compilations during that year, it seemed like.
Honestly, half of those I've never even seen.
Yeah, I mean, there's some more I have for sure. I think I have probably almost every compilation that you were on.
Excellent.
All your best tracks are on compilations, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about your the painting.
Oh yeah, the cover of the Stray Light. So part of the thing, so this kind of like sophisticated art thing of the Frankfurt scene. So Recycle or Die, when it was set up, all of the covers are by famous artists. They're all like famous contemporary artists. And I think Heinz Roth, who ran IQ and what was their other label? Hard House and
Yeah, IQ stuff.
he fancied himself as a kind of like an art collector, I think. And this was kind of like, I think maybe it was a tax dodge, them buying all this artwork and so on. But I had understood it that I would get to keep the painting afterwards, and then that didn't actually happen. But it's not worth as much as I thought. I looked it up the other day. So I think worth about $3,500 or something. So the whole really original ambient house DJing, chill out DJing thing in London. So Alex Patterson and Jimmy Corti used to go to raves, and then they would go back to the KLF squat and go down to the studio and just like listen to make mixes of like Pink Floyd and 10cc and just chill out, playing their own, being stoned on Sunday morning. And then they got the chance to they convinced Paul Oakenfold to let them do that at Land of Oz in the chill out room. And it was just like old hippies playing kind of like, in the early days there were no chill out records. You were playing Eno and ambient and Tension Dream and just things that made sounds, because there hadn't been any releases in that yeah, and that genre until, you know, I would say the first realistic ambient house record would be the Orb, Ever Growing Brain. It didn't really have an identity until that point, I think. So I was booked to support the Orb on the North American tour for. This was when the Orb were now big. I'd been playing in New York and flew to Montreal. There was a rave promoters called the Bus Company in Montreal at that time, which I think Tiga was involved in, and I think there's somebody else who became very famous. Not sure. Anyway, they were putting on the gig. I get to Montreal, my record box has gone to Chicago or something. So I have to go to their office and it's like, it will be back here at 11 o'clock this evening, or 10 o'clock this evening. And I'm due to play like half an hour later. So I've got to go back to the airport. And so I go to the airport and there is my record box. But now these two customs guys are really like pissed off because they've been waiting here for hours, don't want to go home. And they're like, what's in this record box? What's in this box? And I was like, records. And they, are you working as a disc jockey in Canada? Because I don't have a work permit. And I'm like, no, I'm just a collector. And they say, oh, what is the value of these? Are you going to be selling them? And it just became this whole like thing. So finally, I've got out of the airport, rushed back to wherever they all were playing. And I get there and I go to there's the stage, and then the DJ booth is on the far side of the stage. I'm just going across with my record box. Like, yeah, it's okay, I'm here. And the stage manager comes and says, no, you can't go on the stage. And I'm like, no, I'm the warm-up DJ. I need to get to the DJ booth. And he says, no, you don't understand. Alex has said he won't set foot on the stage if you've set foot on it.
What?
I'm like, what? What are you doing about Alex? Alex Patterson? Let me go and see him. And like, no, you've been. He won't appear on the same lineup as you anymore. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? I think I can't remember the bus company getting their names. Maybe it was Tigo I went to, and I'm like, just go and talk to him. What the fuck's going on? And he said, so then they set up a ladder for me to climb up the side of the DJ booth to get into it, so I haven't trodden on his stage. And then Alex says, no, I won't have him even in the building. I was forced to be removed. And he said, I think he said that it was because I was a poser who hung around in Berlin pretending to speak German, which was really weird because I'd lived in Berlin for about 5 years at this point. And I don't know. Alex was quite known to have, like, a lot of people will tell you stories. I think it was just after Thrash had left.
Yeah, I've read all those stories.
There were a lot of people were taking a lot of drugs and behaving, and that whole drugs and ego thing just doesn't work well a lot of the time, which is again why I'm glad to be distant from all of that. And I'm glad that my career did not take off like the Orb, for example, or because it would have not brought out the better sides of my personality. So how I left the music business, I just became so enormously disillusioned at around that time, and with the business side of it. I finally got a major major publishing deal, and was ripped off by my manager. And by that time, I had a studio again in London. We used to have a studio underneath the arches at Portobello, and I had big mixing desk and racks of synthesizers and all this kind of shit. And I just became so disillusioned with making music. It was just like a chore, and yeah, I just quit. I just one day said I'm not doing this anymore, and sold all my equipment. And I didn't listen to music for about 2 or 3 years. Didn't listen to. So from when I'd been about 10 or 11, I had lived, eaten, slept, breathed music all the time. It was just like it was my passion, my everything, and I became so disillusioned. I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. And of course, I would hear music when I was out places and so on. But I went traveled in Africa, did charity work, traveled in Southeast Asia, did all sorts of things, nothing to do with music. Then got into kind of from my connections in the music business, started doing some like tour management and event management kind of things for exhibition companies and so on. And then actually again through my old colleague Aaron Greenwood, who was my collaborator on some of the mid-period Neutron stuff. He was then working for a company who did Ferrari's Formula One presence. So I went and worked with him, and we toured the world doing Formula One and then World Superbikes and MotoGP for a few years. And yeah, I had nothing to do with music at all. Desire to ever get back into, because the music business because techno and everything had become such an industry in the meantime. My interest in re-interfacing with that in any way was just so less than zero. I went back to, finally went to university, got a degree in building surveying and did a master's degree in advanced environmental issues in architecture, and have been working in social housing for the last 20 years. Spearheading the treatment of damp and mold in social housing, and then became very passionate about like health and medical things more. And so yeah, I suppose the last 15 years have been just doing deep dives into all of that, and yeah, nothing music related at all until now.
I can't tell you how much this meant to me.
Oh, I can't tell you how much it meant to me. Just going back to what I was just saying before about my heart, the copies of that arrived with me, I think, like 4 days after I was released from hospital after my big heart operation, and my life had been so. The year leading up to that had been, my health things had been so utterly fucking miserable. I was like, to the point where I couldn't cross the room. I would be passing out, all this kind of shit, and my survival chances at that time were like 20%. And then I had this groundbreaking operation and been done before and all this kind of shit and blah, blah, and survived, and it worked and it was great. And all of that, and I came home with my heart, and then 4 days later, the vinyl, there's pictures of me in bed with my dog. I can't thank you enough for that.
Yeah, I mean, what started out as just sharing music that I love. When I remember I woke up that morning and you put those pictures on Facebook, and I literally had tears come to my eyes. It just meant so much. It was, it was really a real honor to be your friend, and really an honor to share your music and to see you that you appreciated it in a difficult time. It really meant
I can't, I mean, without wanting to be too gushingly emotionally kind of like mutual love thing. Yeah, the same for me. I brought tears to my eyes when I opened that box, and as I said at the time, I think when you contacted me, it was the first time I appreciated that I had fans to whom my music really meant something.